Okay.
She's losing it.
That's better to be here. Usually she calls if she's not here. Okay, I've got 5 o'clock, so if we're ready, I will call to order this July meeting of the Carroll County Economic Development Authority. And if you will, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation from Mr. Carroll. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray together. Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessing and your help as we're gathered here today. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work and the spirit and joy that we would have with enthusiasm to do this work. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in what we do here for this county. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Mr. Collins, I appreciate that prayer and the spirit of joy. That's what we ought to do everything with, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, on a sad note, however, I want to begin this meeting by sharing with you all, and I think you all received the email. I apologize to Sandy. I don't think I copied her, but Larry Chambers has offered his resignation effective July 1st, and I want to just read for everyone the letter that he shared with me. Mr. Ricky Thomas, Chairman, Carroll County Economic Development Authority. Dear Ricky, after giving it a lot of thought, I have decided to resign as a member of the Carroll County Economic Development Authority effective July 1st. I have been a member of the IDA-EDA Authority for more than 30 years and served several terms as secretary. Although I'm semi-retired, I still work for the Gazette covering sports and other stories, and I'm also secretary of the Blue Ridge Country Club. I've just got too much going on. During my time on the board, I've enjoyed serving with a lot of dedicated members and talented county administrators as we work to bring economic development to Carroll County. We have had a lot of accomplishments and some setbacks along the way. I think with your leadership and continued excellent support of the Board of Supervisors that we can continue to bring economic development to the county and provide jobs for our citizens. I wish you and the entire board nothing but success in the future. Larry. So I want to just add my heartfelt thanks to Larry for serving for all these years and for what he's done for this county. He's going to be missed. So on our agenda, we have the next item is citizens' time, but I think it would probably be appropriate. We'll need someone taking the minutes for tonight, so.
Well, we had brought Crystal Adams from this point forth.
Was it yours?
Was it yours?
Did you get yours off too?
I unplugged mine.
I just hit the push button, let's see what happens. Oh. Maybe it was you.
It was mine.
Definitely you. Wow.
Here. Try it now. Much better. Thank you, Richard. So that's good. I wasn't aware of that, but that takes care of that. So item number 3 on our agenda is citizens' time. Do we have anyone that wants to come speak for citizens' time? If not, do we have, we'll move to the minutes of the previous meeting. Anyone have any comments or questions for the minutes?
I always have comments. I went back through and listened to the meeting again, and I did compile some additional information to what Larry did, and I printed it out for you all because I wasn't sure with his resignation who needed to receive that. And I will pass these out for you guys to review. And I guess last time I think we may have voted to add those to the minutes. I think I've got one more copy, Sandy.
You can email it if you want.
I may not. I don't, but I can send it to you. I know that I was accused of being nitpicky last month, but I do feel like we had such a deep conversation about our minutes during last meeting, and we had a lot of important discussion that it all needed to be included. So that's why I compiled that.
Before you discuss those minutes, I want to pass out some information. I watched you on YouTube. Get a blue copy, hand them back to them. That'd be the original. Oh, my goodness. I apologize for last month, missing the meeting, but I don't want to be anywhere around it. Sick and the fever and got tested twice for COVID. Maybe they're both happened. Didn't make me feel any better. There was considerable discussion last time about what the sale price and what, this is the actual resolution that was passed by the EDA board. It states 108,000. This was signed.
I would also like to add that while I was up here looking for some stuff in one of our filing cabinets, Justin Bernard approached me really out of the blue, and he brought me the deed, the original deed, and highlighted, and he felt like we were accusing him of a data entry error, but he's told me, because I wasn't sure how it worked, that once the deed is recorded in the clerk of court's office, it's then sent to the commissioner of revenue, and it's more or less automatically goes into the GIS system. But the deed also reads 108,000, and it's even marked out and written in over the $90,200, but it's not initialed, and that's signed by Mr. Truitt.
So, I guess the question is, with this information, where do we stand with this, or what's our next course of action? Or what would you like to do?
Was there a head statement?
I guess this is, I watched the YouTube 3 times. And the discussion was, whether he did anything wrong or not. My take is, if the motion was and the resolution passed, it was 108,000. There's whatever it was, 9,800 on YouTube that we said we accepted. I want to understand why you thought that was right.
Was there a head statement prepared
No. Oh, well, I don't know if it's prepared.
and presented? There wasn't one in the records?
The only thing that I had was from Larry in the minutes that actually did say 9,800, 200, whatever that number is. And that's, of course, this was discussed in closed session, so I don't think this existed at the time. But that's what the check is, and that's never seen it crossed out, I've seen it now. But I had never seen the crossed out deeds until we made the inquiry, and Justin even made the comment that he thought it was unusual that what had been typed in there had been hand crossed out and overwritten. But, and I've never seen this document, so.
So which figure is typed in and which figure is written in?
90,200 is typed, it's crossed out, and 108,000 is written in. Sorry, I forgot to push my microphone button. I guess my concern is all the documentation that we have, except for the check, says 108,000, and it's alarming to me. Here we are again, that there's an amount unaccounted for, whether it is or whether it isn't.
So does someone have access to the minutes from that? Because I guess that's what we were going by was the,
Well, I screenshotted them. I didn't have them pulled up, but the minutes where that was discussed, it was in, on February 5th, 2018, and it's under land resolution. And it says, Mr. Sowers made the motion to approve a resolution to sell 8.8329 acres of land in the Carroll County Industrial Park to Donald and Unella Branscombe. The purchase price was $90,200. Their stated purpose for the property was for an office, machine shop, and other business use. Also, as part of the motion, Mr. Willie and Mr. Truitt were given the authorization to sign all legal documents connected with the land sale. Mr. Chambers seconded the motion, which was approved by a 7-0 vote.
And that was in February? This is in November.
These minutes were
before.
dated February 5th, 2018.
That's the one I had, so.
That's the February 5th.
What is this right here in
So this is,
November of
this is,
17?
this agreement was before the minutes of the agreement to sell it.
That's the only one I had, I drew it out.
The deed is dated the 9th of February.
You were here.
Is that?
Yeah.
And me.
Yeah. Supposedly, who knows?
so we have this information, I guess. Do we have a motion of how we want to respond or how we want to move forward with this information?
I think that it would put my mind at ease if I don't know how we would go about doing an investigation into this matter, but it would make me feel a lot better.
I'm going to put that in the form of a motion.
I have already written it down.
All right.
Can I make an observation here just on this document?
You sure can.
The one thing that I noticed right here is that the resolution itself includes a statement that's not in these minutes, and that's the 1.1 acre additional piece, which is probably the difference. But that's not in these minutes.
Could they have been in a later monthly?
It's possible, but I think we looked, and I'll look again just to be absolutely certain, but when this came up, I went through the records looking for something that was deposited at a later date that would have represented this difference, and I don't see it. But I'll look again,
Yeah.
just because we now have a specific number.
Because this does say 8.8329 acres, more or less, together with a 1.1 acre portion of adjacent property. That was not mentioned in the,
Yeah, I have a deed. For acreage, hold on just a second. 8.8329.
so Ms. McCraw, you have a motion?
Yeah, I can do that for you. I make the motion that because of current information obtained from Mr. Bernard and learning GIS information is directly obtained from Circuit Clerk's office, I make a motion that we further investigate into this matter, the sale of tax map parcel number 82A42C, Mr. Branscombe, as performed by an outside entity such as the Virginia State Police or Commonwealth Attorney.
What tax parcel did you say?
82A 42C. That's what the deed says. Is that not what you have?
Well, when you look at the map, we got 82A, 42A, 82A, 42C. One stated as part of that, and then
So I could reword it to just property sold to Mr.
well,
Branscombe.
I'm not sure it's not correct. It's just we're saying subject to a survey of 1.1 acres out of parcel 82A, 42A. Was that survey, we don't know where that survey was ever occurred or not.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? So hearing no second, the motion fails. Any other discussion on this property? I'll make a comment. I think, has anyone talked with Mr. Branscombe about this? Has anyone actually had a conversation?
Last time they talked about this specific subject, I met with Don to get this agreement about the stormwater retention pond and temporary sediment basin. And this subject hadn't even, at that point, come up. But I've known Don for a long time. I don't have a problem talking to him.
I would just recommend that maybe the easier way, or the easier first step might be just to have a conversation with him and just find out what he knows about it and maybe shed a little more light on it, and then we'll bring it up next time and have a little more information.
One comment we might, I addressed the issue, I think, at the last meeting on the, we need to look to the court records more so, because today, I've looked at two parcels. One was a vacated alleyway. It's still showing on the map. It's been vacated for 9 years. There's a parcel that we purchased in Withville that's 1.5 years old, and it's still being shown as the previous owner. So really the only legal thing that we need to look at, and this might be the attorneys, it may be, I don't want to cast any blame, but we need to make sure, and I would defer to counsel, I think we need to make sure we're looking at the actual legal entity, which I think would be the clerk of the court.
But I got this from the clerk of the court. I mean, this is where it came from. The deed came from the clerk of the
Yep.
court.
Right, that's what I'm saying, but I think the GIS, we don't want to be looking at that, because it can vary. I mean, it'd be important just take that out of the equation. I'd like to hear a comment from legal counsel on that.
This is disconnected now.
Yes. No, it's not.
I'll just talk as loud as I can. So when title's transferred, you take that deed to the circuit court, it's out of the party's hands at that point, and the record is what it is. So whatever is actually physically in the circuit court clerk's office is what is of record, and that was the legal transaction. As legal counsel, it does make sense to me to follow up with the parties and see if there's some explanation as why you've got one price recited in the documents that approve the transaction, and you've got a different price recited in the deed itself that was of record. Was Does that represent any additional money that changed hands? And that's the big question that needs to be answered.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Dalton, can you follow up with Mr. Branscombe and just see if he has any additional information?
His number says 12,124.
Thank you. So I guess before us now is the amendments to the minutes. I haven't looked them over carefully, but you have a motion to accept these. I guess these are pretty much transcribed from YouTube, correct? Okay. So do we have a motion? Anyone like to make a motion to add these amendments to our minutes? And I guess that would come from you if you so want to make that motion.
I make the motion that we accept the amendments to the minutes as presented.
Do we have a second? I'll second it, just so we can have a vote. Any discussion on the minutes? Or so we can move on to discussion, excuse me. Hearing no discussion, are you ready to vote? All in favor of approving the amendment to the minutes, and we are voting right now only on the amendment. All in favor of approving the amendment as offered to the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The amendment passes, so now the question is on the passage of the minutes as a whole. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I make the motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
We have a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion on the minutes as a whole, as amended? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. So next item is payment of invoices and treasurer's report, Ms. West.
This way I can stand up without, don't have to lean over on there because it hurts. Okay, so we do the claims and the report together or separately?
We do the claims first, and then we'll do the report after, if you'd like.
Okay, there's a number of items, rather than going over each and every one of them separately. As far as AEP, as I mentioned at our previous meeting, we do have a number of AEP invoices now that are monthly, and they are coming in, and I did resolve that item. I forget who, I guess I sent it to Ricky and Solel about the one from, that looked like something we hadn't had before, but it was actually just because it was so far behind, the amount was considerably more. And when I sorted it out, it was okay, which I'd like to get permission from the board to put through at least one more month of these next month so that we actually pay 2 months, even though the amount won't be precise. Because by the time these come in and they go through the process with the county to get approved, and Ricky sorts them out and gets them to the, says to send them to the EDA, and then especially under the current circumstances, because Crystal's mailing me things, or occasionally I get to come in and get it, but we just have a pretty big lag, and because we only have a meeting once a month, it's almost, at the first of the month, it's almost impossible to get them paid on time. It's not a lot of money, but every single one of them has a past due amount. So if you look at all of your AEP bills, you will see that I've crossed out the amount that it shows that's due, and I've handwritten in the amount that we're going to pay, because in reality, that other amount's already been paid. It's just all 1 month behind. So if you're okay with that, then next month I'll do 2 of them, and then that way we won't be behind, and we'll just adjust the amount, because they'll automatically adjust it on the next bill, if that's acceptable.
acceptable with me. Does anyone have a comment? Mr. Dalton?
Sandy, the Board of Supervisors passed a resolution and allowed the county administrator to prepay all electrical bills and
Yay.
bills that would have past due amounts or interest. I would ask and then you come in and bring them and have it ratified.
Okay.
I'd ask this EDA board to consider that.
Is there anything other than AEP that we'd want to include in that grouping?
On your list,
Payments, I think.
well, now, the loan payment that was for Cana was approved a long time ago to do that, so we have been one ahead on that for some time. But and the others typically, like, well, I'll say the next one on this list, the Capital One payment, I'm asking you to approve that claim today, but I won't release the check until the funds are received from the county, which have been billed. An invoice has been sent. But again, because of our timing, this one is due on August 1st. So I have to get a check at least approved now, and then wait for the other to come in and get it in the bank. The only other thing right now that would fall, well, there are a couple of other things that would fall under that. And they all happen to be on this list today. We have the PSA, that would be one of those. We also have a Town of Hillsville invoice that we get that is for the water over at the picnic shelter. And again, these are all the same situation. They cycle and we're not getting them, we can't get them processed quick enough to get them when they're due. So the other things that would fall on this list this time, that would also be true, these only happen twice a year, but you can see you have 2 requests for claims for the Tobacco Commission, and both of those are for loans that were given through the Tobacco Commission to some of the local business. And those are due on the 1st of August. And these have been billed to the clients that they should come in from, and I should receive that money before these go out. But in order to have them done on time, I do have to have them approved today. So they would fall, you're over here. So they would fall into that category as well, Salel?
I think so. That gets you on track.
Mhm.
Present them at the next meeting and they can ratify those bills.
Oh, and there's CenturyLink also. It almost takes up this entire list, actually, now that I'm looking at it. So the CenturyLink bill is for the fire alarm over at the Little Tykes Daycare Center, and that is also true of that one. So basically, we just covered everything on the list with the exception of, come on down to check 4404, which is my services from the month of June. And the only thing left that we didn't cover was the Carroll County monthly installment on the IP loan. Any questions? Well, I'm sorry, and the ACHs, of course, but those have already been, and they're timely. They take them straight out of our account, so there's no issue with those.
So maybe the best way to do this is to go ahead and approve this as presented, and then we'll entertain a motion to streamline these a little bit for next month and ongoing. So right now, if someone wants to make a motion to approve the claims as presented by Ms.
I'll make the
West.
motion.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Sowers, a second from Mr. Edwards on approving the claims as presented in front of you. Any questions, any other questions before we vote? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the claims as given by Ms. West, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. They pass. So do we want to, at this time, have a simple motion to more or less pre-approve these monthly routine? So I guess how would we need to word that, or what would be the best way to word that? Did the county board of supervisors have a wording?
The way the board prepay, the motion they made is to prepay all, allow prepay utilities, bills that would have late charges, that type of thing, that are recurring on a monthly basis.
And I would just add, and direct that they be submitted for ratification.
Yep.
I think that's implied, but just want to state it out loud.
Mr.
With the
Evans.
word recurring, would that cover recurring monthly expenses?
I don't think so from the standpoint that they are different every month, and they don't carry late fees. The ones that we're talking about do.
Larry, maybe the right thing to say is utility payments and loan thing, loan documents that are recurring. That sort of narrows it down.
Mhm.
Utility, that's telephone, electric, water.
That would cover everything on this list.
So basically, if we had a simple motion that just said that we authorize the payment of recurring utility payments and loan payments, but they will be ratified at the earliest possible meeting. Would that be generally accepted? Okay, if that being the case, I'll move that we authorize the financial officer to pay any recurring utility payments, loan payments, or bills that have a late fee, but they would need to be brought to us at the next regularly scheduled meeting for ratification.
Okay. Do you want any kind of special designation on those when they're presented, so that you know which ones are which when you're looking at your list?
Would it be very much trouble to do that? And yes.
Okay.
Do we have a second on my motion?
I'll second that.
We have a second. We have any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion then, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. And we'll move to the treasurer's report.
Okay, we started the month with operating capital of $856,483. The income for the period was $77,304. Do note that there were 2 Carroll County Public School deposits. I mentioned that at the last one, that the check didn't go in until the first of this month, so that's why you have 2 in this month. The Little Tykes check did come in, the replacement check, I think I mentioned, that had been erroneously filled out, and so that now pays her, through July, so she is up to date on that. The expenses that you approved last month that fall, and I just will make an observation here in case that hasn't come up before. The distinction on here for facilities and equipment, repairs and maintenance versus operations is just basically those things that are submitted by either Ricky or the maintenance department that pertain to things that we're obligated to take care of on those properties versus things like the utility bill, which are part of our operations. That's really the only distinction. And the numbers are small. There's nothing really significant there, but just in case you were wondering why. So we had $1,312 worth of expenses recorded in June. And then the debt payments, which are the regular ACHs that we do every month, are $43,394. Then we have our reserve, which is the $2,325 that we're required to put away every month towards the Carroll County High School bond note. And that brings us to an ending funds balance of $886,755.48, of which restricted funds are $225,216.69, that is for the Carroll County High School bond, and $363,644, which you just approved to be paid from the funds. And that leaves us with an operating funds balance of $297,895, of which $97,295 is restricted for incentives.
You've heard the financial report. Do you have questions or comments? Someone have a motion that we approve this report as given?
I move that we approve the treasurer's report.
Have the motion to approve the treasurer's report. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Mr. Collins. Have any further discussion? All in favor of approving the treasurer's report, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, say no. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
You're welcome.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, sir.
It was brought to my attention just before the meeting began that the authority needs an authorized signer for checks. I've just emailed you a draft resolution for the authority's adoption, and I'm happy to recite it for you if you'd like, but thought that might be appropriate given that we're in the process of paying bills. We probably want someone who can sign those.
I'm looking at this very quickly. It looks fine to me. Would you like to read that?
I'm
the
happy to.
board?
Bear with me one moment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a document entitled Resolution of the Carroll County Economic Development Authority. That reads, whereas the Carroll County Economic Development Authority, the authority, has found it necessary and proper to designate its authorized representatives who may sign drafts and endorse checks on behalf of the authority, and whereas the authority has determined to designate blank as an authorized representative who may sign drafts and endorse checks on behalf of the authority, now therefore be it resolved by the Carroll County Economic Development Authority as follows. Blank, the fill in the office of the authority, is hereby designated as an authorized representative who may sign drafts and endorse checks on behalf of the authority, and it is further resolved that all such actions by the officer designated herein shall be taken pursuant to due authorization from the board. The foregoing resolution was approved by affirmative vote of the authority this 6th day of July, 2020, by quorum duly assembled at its regularly scheduled meeting. The vote was taken as follows, and there are blanks for the ayes and the nays. And if the board's inclined to adopt it, I would just suggest the motion to adopt the resolution, designate the person and the office that's held.
Okay, so we'll have to have a board member actually move the motion given by Mr. Durbin. Thank you for drafting that, by the way. And naming the additional person that we want to be the signer. The additional signer.
I'll make the motion for Ricky Thomas to be able to sign.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any further discussion? Any additional signers that you want to add? I'm assuming we
Is it
can
just
add
the-
more than one. Is that,
Is it just the two of you?
right now Sandy's the only signer that we have. Mr. Durbin, I'm assuming that we can add more than one name and office to this, correct?
Yes.
It was recommended that we have three. We just didn't, we were going to have three, but so you might want to name someone else as well.
Are you willing to do it since you're the assistant chair?
Yes, I can.
I would then move that Mr. Sowers be added to the list as an approved signer. We have a second. I have the motion. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? So, unless you guys want this resolution read one more time, we'll simply say that it's given to us by Mr. Durbin, and we have amended it to include my name as chairman and Mr. Sowers' name as vice chairman to the signing authorization. So all in favor of accepting the motion, the resolution, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, say no. Thank you, Mr. Durden.
If I might just mention, as soon as I can get a copy of that resolution, I'll get it to the bank and we'll start the process and I'll be in touch with you to let you know what you need to do.
You got a copy of it, so we just need to get a signed copy. You have a copy now. Okay, so is there any, I have some old business, but is there any other old business that any of the members would like to bring up?
I need to, were you able to talk to the Little Tykes about what we discussed at the last meeting?
I have not.
Okay.
Actually, today's the first real day back at work almost.
So I handed out, before the meeting, I handed out an updated background of the A&G issue that we're fastly approaching the end of the first 5 years. Some of this stuff is redundant. It's emails that I've sent board members in the past, but what I'd like to do is, since the conclusion of this first 5 years ends with this calendar year, I would like us to actually begin a process that Mr. Dalton and I talked about a few weeks ago, which is to actually begin discussing the conclusion of the first phase of this agreement with Appalachian Natural Gas. So I don't, unless you guys have questions on any of the things that I've attached my basic summary, I've attached minutes of the 2 meetings that we had with them, and I've attached the financials, latest estimates of their capital spend through the end of 2019 and their actual capital spend through the first quarter of this year. So if anyone has any questions or anything on the information, they can ask, but I'd like to go ahead and get the motion out there. So I've included the language for the secretary back there to include, but I move that the Carroll County EDA Executive Director and Legal Counsel are hereby instructed to begin formal discussions with A&G on the assessment of the initial 5-year period of the asset purchase agreement. This should include a third-party review of the financials used to validate A&G's performance against the agreement, with a 50% shared expense to each party. The Executive Director and/or Legal Counsel will provide a written monthly summary to the EDA Board until the agreement is reached. I'm sure that motion is not perfect, but I put it out there just to get us started on this process of beginning to bring this agreement to somewhat of an understanding before the term expires, the 5-year term. So I have that motion before you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. And Mr. Collins, is there any discussion? Mr. Durbin, do you have any comments on that? Anything you would like to see added or any better direction?
I don't really have any amendments. I think that gives us at least the direction to take those first steps.
Basically, we think it's a shared expense on the audit by a third party. It would be acceptable to both parties. If there are no questions, then all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries. If anybody else has more business, I'm just going down my list right here. If anybody else has any they want to bring up, just please let me know.
Have you received a list of improvements that made to the property leased by Virginia Produce?
I have not personally, no. So on my list of old business, and I talked about this with Mr. Durbin today, the deed to the Cana Fire Department that we brought before the board back in September of last year. Do you have any additional information for us on that?
Mr. Thomas, I think I initially looked at that and we discovered there was a deed of trust on that. I think that the made a request to verify whether the deed of trust had been released, and I think that's where the communication must have broken down. It'd be a simple matter to prepare a deed to transfer back to the department, but that is something that we'll need to resolve by the next meeting, just to confirm that it has been. I think that you can authorize the reconveyance, and I can present a deed to you at your next meeting if that's how you'd like to proceed, but.
Richard, do you have any comments on that or anything, how you'd like to see that happen?
No, I don't know. What do you think?
So the deed of trust essentially has been satisfied, and there's no claim against that right now. So if I understand it, then they're good without doing anything, correct?
I'm advised that the deed of trust has been paid, but I've not received confirmation that it's been released. So it may still be a cloud on the title to the property, but the EDA can convey it subject to whatever encumbrances are on it and allow the department to address whether there's been a release or not.
So I'd have to go back and look in the minutes, but is that not what we did, or did we just simply ask for?
I'd have to go look at the minutes and see what they actually say.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Was the deed of trust with a local financial institution?
No. Western Bank of Chinook or something?
Yeah, I think
Missouri?
Chinook is, yeah,
Yeah.
was what it was.
Are you gonna contact them, Stephen? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm happy to confirm in the clerk's office whether that deed of trust has been released and follow up with the trustee on that deed of trust if need be. I believe it's originally was designated as Mr. Tom Jackson, so.
Can you do that for us, please, and report back?
Yes,
at
I'll
the
be
August
happy to.
meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we had quite a bit of discussion around Virginia produce and the tax issue. Mr. Durbin and I spoke quite a bit today, and we would like to kind of have some clarity, some more clarity than possibly what everyone had last month. And before I read this motion, would you like to just address the board on your findings concerning this matter up since last meeting, kind of get everybody up to date?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I've reviewed all of the documents that were provided to us by Virginia Produce, and in my view, there's nothing that explicitly ties the proposal document that had all of the terms to either to the Project Baby Fresh or to any other approved motion that I could locate. There has been some partial performance under that, or consistent with that term sheet on both sides, but there is still it's just not, I would recommend that the authority not authorize payment at this time and either make a decision to not make any further grants of the tax, or if the authority is inclined to continue to make grants consistent with that term sheet, that we put an addendum or a novation agreement in place that really kind of cleans it up. I think that the most likely thing that happened is that the motion was not clear when adopted back in 2017. And so if the authority is inclined to continue making grant disbursements, that we put an agreement in place that addresses clarifying that motion, that clarifies what the intention of the parties were regarding the grants and the incentive, to clarify what the parties, this authority and Virginia Produce, really mean by machinery and tools, whether that's consistent, whether you mean the strict definition in the Code of Virginia, or whether you want to put another definition on it, to ratify and confirm the prior payments that were made by the EDA consistent with that term sheet, and to resolve any possible claims regarding that proposal, including a release of possible claims regarding Project Baby Fresh 1, or not Baby Fresh, Fresh Part 1 that was referenced in that term sheet. Because if you look at that term sheet, it does say that these grants supersede any grants that might be due under the previous Project Fresh. So that's how I would suggest that you proceed if you do want to continue with the grant program, that it be referred to legal counsel to prepare an agreement that ratifies all that and sort of cleans up what was unclear previously. And that's about all I probably am comfortable saying in open session. If you'd like to have a closed session discussion, I'm certainly happy to do that.
So for the purpose of letting the board know, Mr. Durbin and I, or Mr. Durbin actually came up with a suggested motion that we could adopt if you want to move forward with the tax relief. That would allow him to go through a process of cleaning up the May 2017 resolution a little bit to make it clear on what we're doing and what's being offered and what they actually did. So before, I guess, number one, I need to get some indication of whether we still want to proceed with that payment. If we do, we need to do this intermediate step, which is to have an amendment or an addendum to clarify this a little bit better. So I'm going to kind of open the floor at this time to questions, comments, or next steps.
Is it possible we could discuss it in closed session so we could hear the other comments that Mr. Durbin has?
If you like. So I see we don't have a closed session on our agenda, but we could certainly add one. I would suggest that we maybe get through the open session agenda items and go into closed session and discuss those. So since no motion was made, we'll just set this aside. We don't have to table anything since no motion was made, but we'll set this aside and have a deeper discussion in closed session, if that's okay. The last thing I have, or two things I have on my list, any update on Woodlawn School
We
project?
do have an update on Woodlawn School. We were proceeding along at a pretty well pace. We got our Alta survey in. The Alta survey, the surveyor noted, I think it's 1874, 1878, one of those years, there was a reversion clause under the Woodlawn School to the Fultons. That has put us into a screeching halt of moving forth to close. County attorney, we have title insurance on the property. Mr. Durbin has contacted title insurance company, so we're moving forth with that research. They're looking into it. He may have an update on the title insurance.
Just to piggyback on Mr. Dalton's comments, I actually did receive a phone call from counsel for the title insurance company immediately prior to getting on the road for this meeting. It was a productive conversation. I provided some additional documentation that he requested. Obviously, I'm hopeful that we're going to have a favorable resolution on that. He asked for a little time to review the deeds and in the chain of title and get back to us. But I suggested a possible resolution, and I think he was open to that. So we'll just have to see once I hear back. I expect it will just be a matter of days before I get a reply on the coverage question.
Thank you.
And the reversion is only for 1.1 acres. That's right in the middle of the building.
Important, 1.1 acres.
So was it like the original, I guess the original part of the
With
building?
it wasn't the original one. The E.S. Fulton granted additional property beside the old Woodlawn School. As part of the deed, if it said in the deed, and I'll paraphrase, that if it ceased to be a school, the property reverted back to his heirs. So all around, past the 1 acre where the gym's at, all that property is okay. It's just the 1.1 acre where the cafeteria basically sat, and the library is what he gave.
Well, I guess if we have any updates in between this meeting and next meeting, you'll share those with us.
Well, if it's favorable, at the next meeting, we'll ask for authorization to close this baby out.
Very good.
Move forward.
And the last thing I have right here is there any update on the Carroll County broadband project from last year? I know we've had a couple of meetings a few weeks ago, but I've heard nothing in a while.
Last month was a wasted month. We actually had a meeting scheduled with Mount Rogers PDC to move that forward. That didn't happen because of sickness and things, so we've got to pick that back up.
I would just say that that's something that anything that we can do to assist the Board of Supervisors in that project, we'd be very interested because of the situation right now. We've got several school children that are at a severe disadvantage for not having access to good broadband in this county. So I'd like to see us do whatever we can, move any mountains to get that done. That's all of my list of old business. Is there any others? Hearing none, we'll go on to new business, and I see we have some VIAA people here that are wanting to talk to us. Hey, Josh.
Thank you for having me back twice in the same year. Hope everybody's staying healthy. Glad to see Mr. Dalton on his feet. I know he hadn't been feeling too well. But last time I came, I gave kind of a brief overview of what we do, how we do it, kind of outcomes, what we were projecting. Fortunately, the past couple of months, we've been fairly busy with business retention and expansion, of which we have a new staff member that's doing a lot of work in the Carroll County, Galax, Grayson area the past several months. But what we've had going on at the executive committee, I don't know how much have you shared with the EDA about what we've been trying to do and work with Blue Ridge Crossroads EDA and really provide a greater value to the partner localities within that agreement. So we've signed some MOUs with Brasida to kind of carry on or moving forward, carry out some of the things that they were doing with an executive director. So they're going to forego hiring an executive director. BIAA is going to absorb some of those functions, carry out the administrative tasks to keep the organization running day to day, but also carry out more of the functional parts of the RFIs and hosting prospects and project management. So in doing that, we needed some additional support, and what we've decided was a new organizational structure where we could provide that services to Brasida, but also provide some value add to the partner localities directly. And what we've decided to do was hire an economic development manager that would work with the localities directly or the EDAs on projects every year. And you guys have mentioned a few during this meeting that I feel like this economic development manager, who I'll introduce here in just a second, can spearhead those projects and really lead those ahead, because that's really what the localities are lacking. There's a lack of economic development staff at the local level, and so projects get lost in the shuffle because there's not somebody focused day to day on making sure that those applications, the grants, the capital stacks, everything that is needed to carry that out, there's not a leader in charge of that, and it's just due to a lack of staff, a lack of funding. So the concept we came up with was, okay, well, if we're going to carry this out for Brasida, I also envisioned for Brasida a while back that they could play more of a role in serving their localities. So really, for no additional funding outside of what the county of Carroll is paying into Brasida, we're providing these services on top of what was being performed at that Wildwood location. So my hope is that this first year, this is a new concept. Most regional groups do not get this involved at the local level. So this is a novel concept, but I feel good because, our localities with the population, I think in total we're about 110,000. And some localities on their own are, like Roanoke County, Roanoke City are 100,000. I think we can serve in that capacity, but this first year will be a good test for that. So without getting too far in the weeds, I wanted this meeting to do an introduction with Nicole Hare, who we just hired from the town of Pulaski. She was a deputy town manager there, and I'll allow her to come up and introduce herself and give a little bit of her background. But I was anticipating that this meeting could be more of a conversational piece about hearing from you what you see as gaps in some of the economic development services in the region and where we might be able to serve in that capacity. Again, the few that I think of when I came to Carroll County was there's some brownfield opportunities. There is the broadband with Body. We've had some meetings with Ricky and the Tobacco Commission and Commonwealth Connect to try to figure out what that application process looks like. And again, we have Jake Tabor, who is our business retention and expansion specialist, who's already doing work with the local companies, and we have some active projects of which we're working with Solel and the county administration office and trying to secure those deals. But I'll introduce Nicole Hare. Again, I gave a brief introduction, but I'll let her tell you guys a little bit about what her background is and what she sees coming in, and also take questions from you and any feedback you have.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Josh said, I'm Nicole Hare. I have about 19 years' experience in local government. I started with the town of Christiansburg in the planning and zoning department and ended my career there after 14 and a half years as their planning director and zoning administrator. And then I went on to the town of Pulaski most recently as their deputy town manager and zoning administrator and overseeing the community development department. So I was overseeing quite a few projects relating to grants and economic development. And so I feel I can bring a lot of those tools in my toolbox that I carry with me to your community and to the communities across our region. So I'm looking forward to working with you all. I was taking notes back here about the broadband issue and also the Woodlawn School potential there. So I'm excited to work on those projects with you all and anything else that I can support you in.
Very good. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much.
One of the things that VIA can do for us in Carroll County, Grayson, and the others is with this additional staff that we're negotiating these MOUs, they can actually stay in contact every day between the state of Virginia, the governor's tobacco commission, and all the other grant agencies out there to allow us that continuity, no matter who the county administrator is, allows us continuity to continue on from project to project. No matter if we change, that VIA will be there long-term as an organization. What happened to make that happen is all the counties had to up our contribution rates to VIA, and Versita threw in about $80,000 or whatever the number is to make that happen. So for long term, for the Mount Rogers region, from Smith County to the north and to the east, it has solidified our concept of economic development. And VIA can actually monitor what's best for each one of our counties, working with county administrators, because there's, except for Witt County, there's not an economic developer in any county. You may want to expand on that, John?
No, I mean, those are the major highlights. You know, background, the organization was created to function as a marketing outreach, external-facing organization. When I was hired back in 2015, you know, there's a lot more voids in the region that we need to determine how we're going to approach those. You can market yourself all day, but if you don't have some of the infrastructure and assets in place, then we're losing projects. So, you know, your batting average is lower. So we've gotten our at-bats up, but our batting average is still fairly low. But there's some things that we can do better, and there's some projects that I think can help, broadband being, you know, kind of low-hanging fruit, you know, development of brownfield sites, conceptual developments, architectural renderings for some of the sites off of potentially exit 14. You know, there's all these ideas that we have, and we probably need to sit down in some group sessions and hear from you directly about some areas that we can focus on. Again, because it's your plan. You know, we have the comprehensive plan, and we work with the PDC, and we see what's out there, but we really need the input. You know, where we can focus. And working directly on the body and some other things. I think Nicole will step right in and start spearheading that and getting the band back together to try to move that forward. I know you mentioned it to Salil earlier on kind of probably the Wi-Fi hotspots that I'm assuming you was referring to, but we're talking more about the expansive, getting the broadband and permanent and get the speeds where they need to be.
So Josh, are you guys in a position right now to maybe have a Zoom meeting or something with us at your all's convenience to maybe do a little brainstorming on what we can do to get off to a good start with this?
Yeah, I think over the next couple of weeks, I project we'll probably get out and try to do as many face-to-face meetings, do introductions for Nicole, and probably get an agenda, some conceptual frameworks in place about what we think we can accomplish with her position, and then start setting up those group meetings, kind of sessions, and let her lead that effort to nail down some very specific things we can do for you, you know, value add above and beyond your contribution to Versita and the Wildwood property itself.
Very good. Any other questions for Josh or comments?
Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
On the agenda, we have no other scheduled new business. Is there any other new business that members would like to add to the agenda?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Collins.
In light of the Board of Supervisors voting to take applications and hire a county administrator in the month of July, they're taking applications for that. I'd like to move that the Economic Development Authority ask the County Board of Supervisors to include members of the EDA in the interview process as well as the selection of the next county administrator.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Open the floor up for discussion. Anybody want to ask questions or provide comments?
Just let me add one comment. It's the reason for me making the motion. In light of the fact that our county administration is also placed in the position of Executive Director of the Economic Development Authority, further that the Board of Supervisors has recently asked for a stricter accounting of the transactions of the EDA, I move this motion. I just believe it gives us a closer working relationship.
I agree. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Any other new business? Hearing none, I'm going to go to authority members' time, and I want to take this time to apologize to Ms. McCraw. On the last meeting, when I got to authority members' time, I kind of started over on the right side of the room, worked my way to the left side of the room, and didn't come back to the right. So I want to offer you my apology for missing you last time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let you start, and then we'll work around the room, and if you think of anything else, you can have the closing time. So,
Okay.
Ms. McCraw, any comments or things you'd like to share?
You know, the only comment that I would like to make is that I would like to see us continue to move forward and work better together as a team to make our wonderful Carroll County a better place to reside. I think that, you know, our goal and objective is to attract new business here for economic development, but I think that we have some internal things to work out before we can fully devote our time to that, and I would like to see us work beyond those things.
Thank you for comments. Mr. Edwards?
No comment.
Mr. Have any comments?
Mr.
I'd like to
Sack?
thank Mr. Lewis and Ms. Hare for joining us tonight.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Lewis and Ms. Hare for their contribution to the meeting, and I'd like to thank Mr. Durbin for driving down and participating in the meeting tonight as well. So if there's no other comments from authority members, I guess we need a motion to go into closed session.
I make a motion, we go into closed session.
We have a motion to go into closed session. Do we
If
have a
I,
second?
I'm sorry,
Second.
before there's a second, I would like to just give you a little more detail. The Freedom of Information Act, we'd be looking for a motion pursuant to Section 2.2-3711, A7 and A8 for consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters and pending or threatened litigation where open session discussion could prejudice the authority's bargaining position. And specifically, it'd be discussion of the performance agreements with Virginia Produce, the status of grants, and the authority's legal rights and obligations.
And that's your motion, right?
Yes.
Mr. Collins? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of going into closed session pursuant to that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. So we're now out of open session. Thank you, Mr. Durbin, for helping us with that.
Have a good night.
So are we offline back there now?
Let me text him and make sure.
Yeah, we'll have to go in. These mics and everything stay on 100% of the time.